Hey, what's good, everybody? Wanted to make a quick video on how to trade ranges, what I look for, how I enter, how I exit. There's some nuances that I can use sometimes just because of the experience that I have with range trading. But I would say most of the time when I'm trading ranges, this is exactly how I trade it and exactly what I'm looking for to a T. Now, the key to trading ranges is, number one, identify a range. Identify it early. Okay, you want to be trading in the early part of the range. And the reason for that is most breakouts of trading ranges fail. I'll say it again. Most of the time when you see a trading range, the breakouts fail. Are we going to break out? Of course, obviously. We have to break out. Price has to move in one direction or the other. But most of the time, the breakout will fail. So let's look at how many times this range failed to break out. Put in a low, okay? First cue or first keys that you're looking for is we get some sweeps. All right, got some wicks here. Then we sweep these out, send it back up to the top. We can't get to the highs before we start sweeping this candle. Send it back to the lows. Sweeping the lows, sending it back up. Once I see this here and this here, that is when I'm looking for range trades. As soon as I see sweeps at the bottom, sweeps at the top, and we start heading back lower, immediately I'm thinking range. All right, so I mark this out. And what am I marking? I'm not marking this entire range. I do the same thing on ES. So here's ES. Here's the range on ES. This is what I mark out. Oop, let me get rid of that. All I'm marking out is CSSs. And I'm marking out the extreme CSS. So the extreme CSS at this side, the candle that put in the highest wick would be this last up close candle, including the 2 wicks of these down close candles. Same thing at the bottom. Where's the lowest wick? It's not these. None of this closed below here, right? But we did get a new CSS. This candle and that wick is the extreme CSS on the bottom. So the way that I trade this range is I just look for bounces off the CSSs. Okay? And I'm not looking to trade it all the way from this CSS back to this CSS, back to this. I'm not looking for all that. Okay? You could do that, and that's for up to you to back test. But all I like to do, for simplicity purposes, let me show you with this. I take the bottom of this CSS, the top of this CSS, and I'm trying to find the middle. I want to find the midpoint between these CSSs. All right, we got it there. Let's do this. Style, where's the middle line? White. All right, so here is the midpoint. This white line is going to be the midpoint for reference between these two CSSs. The one at the bottom, let me make this blue. We'll make this green. Okay. So this is what we're looking at. And all I'm looking for is I'm looking to take a trade from the CSS to 50%. 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 Okay? That's all I'm looking for. Now, where do you put your stop? Up to you, but if I take a limit sell here at the CSS and I'm looking for 50%, I like to do a 1-to-1. Okay? I like to do a 1-to-1. If you're not comfortable with that, if you're not comfortable with your stop being inside the CSS, that's fine. You just need to have your stop, your entry a little bit higher. Okay? Still target the 50 or the midpoint between the CSSs. You could do that. What about the bottom? All right. If you had got in right here, stop at the bottom of the CSS. %. Again, if you're not comfortable with having it this far and doing a negative R trade, that's fine. Just if you want to do like a 1-to-1 and split it, that's up to you. It would, I like to, if I'm not taking just a straight limit at the CSS high or low, I'm going to wait for some 15-second structure to form and then take the trade. And I'll show you an example of it in a few minutes when I show you the execution. Can you take it all the way from one CSS to the next? Of course you could. I just like to be in and out, right? I'm just looking for my scalps. I go in a little bit bigger size. That way I don't have to hold for too long. I'm in and out. I just feel more comfortable doing it like that. Okay? But, whatever you want to do. Now, here's a couple things you could do. That's the basic. Mark out your extreme CSSs. Find the midpoint between those two CSSs and trade from the CSS high back to the midpoint. From the CSS, or this would be the CSS low, I'm sorry. The CSS low to the midpoint between. From the CSS high here, you would trade from here to the midpoint. Okay? I think that's pretty simple. Tweak this. Find out what works for you. Go back test it. I'll tell you this. When you back test it, you will see how many times ranges hold, and when they don't hold, how many times they break out and return back inside the range. I'm sure you've heard of AMD, so accumulation, manipulation, distribution. Same principle applies, but I'm scalping 1 minute ranges, right? Couple nuances. Let's go over some nuances. So that's the basics. A couple nuances would be, let's say that this candle here, use this. Let's say that this candle right here put in a wick. Like this. That was below the CSS that we had over here. What do? Simple. That becomes my new CSS inside the range. Okay? That would be my new CSS. So that's a new nuance. As long as we don't close below these lows, as long as we don't close below those lows, I will take the CSS and move it to here because this is a failure swing. And we should return back inside. All right. And then when we get back to it, we'll react off of it because it's the new extreme CSS. Again, back test it. Make sure that you see everything that I'm talking about. Let me move this back here. Get rid of this. Now, let's talk about what happens when the range fails. Okay? It will eventually fail. We're not going to stay in a range forever. Okay? when does it fail, and what is my first inclination or key or clue that it's going to fail? When we get a solid close outside, okay, this is not a solid close above this high. It is a close nonetheless, but it's not a solid close. So what I was looking for here is, this is quite a big candle. Was that 2 o'clock? So yeah, end of day stuff is a little bit different. You got to be careful end of day because we just start running. But here's your candle. We closed above this high. So if we were to come back down and close back below this candle here, we close below here, that would then become the new CSS to stay in the range. Since we didn't do that, I'm talking slow. You can fast forward if you need to, but I want to make sure everybody can understand what I'm saying. Since we closed above this high, that was our CSS high, extreme CSS, right here. I immediately pause trading the range and just wait and watch. We come back down. We could never get below the candle that closed above. What is that telling me? That's telling me there's possibly a breakout and continuation coming. Okay. What would have been a good trade? A good trade for if you're a breakout trader. And this has nothing to do with GB model or anything like that. Yeah, I'm not a breakout trader, so I don't even trade this, but I'm just saying if you wanted to do it. I'll trade ranges and I trade our normal GB stuff. Close above, fail to close, back below that candle. Then we closed above the candle that closed above here. You can see it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, that we're probably catching some momentum and going higher. All right, so what would you look at? I would look at trading this candle here, this down close candle. All right, we put in that down close candle, close back above it. I would have either a limit order here at 50% of this down close candle, or I would try to buy, stop out of it, stop at the low, something like this. That would be this candle, stop at the low, looking to target. It would be this low, that high. Looking to target 50% of this range. Possibly even it's close enough. Just target somewhere up here. All right, but back to ranges. The key, again, the key with ranges, and you can mark it on ES as well. Key with ranges is making sure you identify them early in the range so you can trade it early in the range. You don't want to be stuck trying to trade a range after we've tapped it a few times, because then guess what's going to happen? You're going to get your stop ran. So I'm keeping an eye on this. Let's see, let me mark it. It is the opening of the 15-minute body down at 792.75. That's probably where I'll look for a long, back to inside this range. capping off these 800s pretty hard at the moment. Let's see if we can pop up to like 36 or so. 836. Last 5 minutes of a 15-minute candle. See if we put in a wick at the low here. So for anybody watching the video, I like to highlight my stop and just grab it. Even though my stop is still down here, technically, I like to keep it in hand in case we get a really quick push. I do want to have it move to break even once we get pretty close up here. And at any time I feel like this thing is just doing something I'm not expecting, I'll just kill it. So it's a habit, but it's also a comfort of mine to have this ready. It also makes me focus on what's going on, because I do manage my stops a lot of times. If I didn't manage my stop, I would just be checked out, place a trade, and watch a video or something, which is valid. Very valid for a lot of people. Just my style, especially in these range trades, I like to keep my hand on the trigger, so to speak. And as soon as this trade closes, I'll explain in detail what I was looking at.